Okay, so thank you guys for having me. It's really a pleasure. I just want to give you guys a sense of who I am. I live in New York City, but I didn't originally grow up in New York. Where I grew up in a small town in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, very small town. And where I grew up, I was literally the only non-white person in the entire school. So during school plays, I either had to be Squanto the Indian or Martin Luther King, right? Those are the only choices I had growing up. And I work as a stand-up comic, and you know, a lot of people used to ask me, like, okay, how do your parents feel about you doing stuff like this or performing, and how do they feel about you, you know, having a career in the arts? And they've been very supportive of me taking on these initiatives, but they just have a different way of showing that support. And they've always been like that. Like, growing up, you know, I played a lot of football. And, you know, most kids, when they play football, their parents are like, all right, Ryan, you can do it. Score the goal. Mommy loves you. Daddy loves you. Yay! My family was more like, all right, stupid! Why you kick like a girl? I'm like, Grandma, stop coming to my games. Ugh. And I grew up in the United States, and my parents, they grew up in India. And I guess the term you can use to describe them, you guys have the term freshies? Like fresh off the boat? Have you ever heard that term? The term's like fresh off the boat, like they just came here. But when I say fresh off the boat, let's just say they never got off the boat. They just dragged on land with them, like, India's coming with me. India is here in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. But here's the thing, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your culture, being proud of your identity and who you are. But they would tell me things that they said were a part of Islam, but they were actually a part of the culture. And that would always confuse me. Like, I remember when I was 7 years old, we had the prayer rugs in our house. And when I was 7 years old, my mom told me, Aman, if you don't fold the prayer rug, Shaitan is going to pray on it. So my mom told me 7 years old, if I don't fold it, the devil is going to pray on the rug. And I'm 7 years old. I don't know who the devil is. My mom kept saying this guy, Shaitan, coming to the house. So I just imagined some guy breaking into people's houses like, where's the prayer rug? Where's the prayer rug? Oh, man, they folded it. Ugh, got me. And so she would always talk about this to scare me. It's like, if you don't, you know, fold the prayer rug, Shaitan has come to the house. If you don't go to sleep, Shaitan has come to the house. If you don't eat your breakfast, Shaitan has come to the house. So she kept talking about this guy, Shaitan, coming to the house. So I called the police. 100% true story. I called the police, and I picked up the phone, and I was like, hello? Police? I'd like to report a break-in. What does he look like? I don't know. I have a name. His name is Shaitan. Last name? I don't think he has a last name. He's kind of like Madonna. And so the police, they hang up on me, right? And I was so mad. I was like, man, I got to do something. I got to take matters into my own hands. And so the next day, I'm hanging out at my best friend's house, Jonathan Dixon. And I'm at Jonathan's house, and we're watching the movie Ghostbusters, where all those good guys and superheroes have to capture those monsters and ghosts, right? And I'm just watching TV with Jonathan. I'm like, Jonathan, you are going to help me catch Shaitan. And Jonathan's like, Aman, that's a great idea. But who's Shaitan? And I was like, dude, he's like Madonna. And so here was the plan, you guys. The next day, Jonathan slept over that night at my house. And while everybody was asleep upstairs, we snuck downstairs and we took all the prayer rugs and we rolled them across the floor, right? And so then we hid behind the couch with a bag and a baseball bat, right? So we're just sitting there and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting. And after a while, nothing's happening. And so after waiting so long, I have to use the bathroom and the toilet. And so I said, Jonathan, I have to go use the toilet, but you know what to do if Shaitan comes. And so I'm in the bathroom, and I'm washing my hands, and as I'm finishing up, all of a sudden I hear, poof, ah! Aman! I got him! It was my dad. And so I looked at the ground mortified. I was like, oh my God, Dad? You're Shaitan? So that's kind of my life in a nutshell. But how this project came about, how this 30 Mosques project came about was in 2009. I'm not a native New Yorker, but I moved to New York for work, and I met one of my friends there. And in 2009, we found out that there's 163 mosques within a 10-mile radius of where we live. And so just within New York City, within 10 miles, there's 163 mosques. And so one of us said to the other, like, dude, wouldn't it be crazy if we went to 30 mosques in 30 days? And so we came up with this idea, and we went to Facebook, and we went to Twitter, and I tweeted this out in 2009. Because the Muslim community in New York is so big, my friend and I are going to have iftar, the meal to break the fast, at a different masjid. A masjid is just a fancy word for a mosque, every single day. So I posted it on Facebook, and I posted it on Twitter. And as soon as I did that, people started commenting left and right, like, oh man, that's so cool. You should blog about this. You should blog about this. And I was like, why? Why would I want to do that? Blogs are dumb. Like, I don't read blogs. Like, why would I want to put that up there? But they kept insisting, like, no, man, you really have to blog about it. This is really interesting. You really should blog about it. So we said, fine. Just to shut them up, we put up the blog. And so we launched the blog. That's me before the baldness kicked in. Thank you for laughing at my insecurities. And so we launched the blog, and not only were we getting comments from our family and friends, we were getting comments from all over the world. People would be like, hey, I'm in Toronto, I love your blog. Or, hey, I'm in China, I love your blog. Or, hey, I'm in South Africa, I love your blog. Or, hey, I'm in Luxembourg, I love your blog. I'm like, dude, I don't even know where Luxembourg is, but that's awesome that you're reading the blog. And so there was all this cool energy and excitement behind the blog. And so then in 2010, my friend and I, we made a decision because we had a great time in New York, but we knew that our experience wasn't exclusive to New York, that there's all these cool communities around the United States that we could check out. And being a comic and traveling, I knew there was all these cool people we could visit. And so we came up with this idea, wouldn't it be even more crazy if we went to 30 states in 30 days visiting 30 mosques? And so that's how that happened, and that's how this happened. And so this was our route in 2010. We started in New York, went up to Maine, down to Florida, out to California, and kind of crisscrossed back. And then the year after, we started in Alaska and went down the coast out to Hawaii, and then kind of made our way back. And so we covered all 50 states and also Washington, D.C., and we did somewhere around, I want to say about 14 to 15,000 kilometers of driving. And a lot of people ask me, what was your mission? What were you trying to do with this project? Were you trying to put a positive portrayal of Islam, educate people about Muslims, things like that? Honestly, our mission wasn't that at all. It was actually just to tell honest stories about Muslims, positive and negative. Like any community, we have problems, and we need to talk about them openly and honestly. And I wanted to talk about everything, good, bad, the in-between, and I wanted to create a forum to be able to do that. And that's really what the mission behind our project was. But there's one particular story that really inspired us to continue this project, is when we went to Montana. And when we went to Montana, we did some research, and we found out that Montana is the only state in the United States that doesn't have a single mosque in it. So it's the only time that New Jersey can talk trash about someone, right? And so we found out that the Muslims there are trying to build a mosque. And so we said, okay, let's go visit them and let's see what that struggle is like. Like we found out, like we ate at someone's house and we were like, oh, this is really good meat. Where'd you guys get the halal meat from? He said, oh, there's a company in California that we order meat from, and they ship it to us. So they order meat halfway around the country every week. The shipments of like beef, lamb, and kebabs like come to them, and that's how they cook their food. It's strange, but we went to Montana to visit these Muslims and see what this life is like. And if you've been to Montana, it's just a absolutely gorgeous state. And we're driving that day. It was a beautiful day on Montana. I'm just soaking in all the rich mountainscapes. And I'm driving that day. We're in the car. We're dancing to Justin Bieber records. Don't judge me for my music choices. I see you judging me. And we're driving, and I see a trash bag on the road. And I don't think anything of it. I start driving, but boom! It turns out that it wasn't a trash bag. It was actually a rock that we ran over, and smoke is coming out from the back of the car. So I start panicking, and I pull over because this was a rental car, and I don't want the company to find out that this car was damaged. And so we pull over, and smoke is coming out from the back of the car, and now the car won't start. Like, oh man, what do we do? And so I said, okay, let's pull out our mobile phones, and let's call a tow truck service, and maybe they can, help us. So we pull out our mobile phones, no reception. And so now we're panicking. We're stuck in the mountains. Our cars broke down. It's almost time for the Maghrib prayer, time to break the fast. And keep in mind, we're driving every day to a different state, so we need to get stories up on our blog every day. So we're panicking. He's like, what do we do? And so my friend comes up with a plan. He says, okay, I'm going to go get a ride with someone. I'm going to wave someone down and get a ride and go into town. And then I'm going to get cell phone reception. I'm going to call the tow truck service and come back with the tow truck. Aman, you wait here in case the police comes, and you can get them for help. And I said, okay, plan, let's do this. So my friend leaves and leaves me alone in the car on the highway, the side of the road. And I look at my watch. 10 minutes goes by. 15 minutes goes by. 30 minutes goes by. 45 minutes goes by. I'm like, man, where is this guy? It's almost time to break the fast. And so I look out the window, and all of a sudden, I see a bunch of deer run across the highway. I was like, what? And then I see a bunch of coyotes run across the road. I'm like, okay, time to lock the doors. Then I see 3 grizzly bears run across the road. I'm like, okay, I think it's time to do some knuffle. And so I'm freaking out. I'm starting to panic. Like, I'm going to get eaten into a picnic. And I'm like, where is this guy? But then all of a sudden, I hear the tow truck in the background. I'm like, okay, awesome. The tow truck is here. And so the tow truck comes, and Ken, the tow truck driver, gets out of the car. And to tell you about Ken, Ken has one of the coolest mustaches I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I'm convinced that that's not even a mustache. That's his upper lip being protected by the wings of an angel, right? It's beautiful. And so, next slide. And so I'm just daydreaming about this guy's mustache. And we get in the car, and my friend was the photographer on the trip. And he takes a picture of Ken. And he asks Ken, he's like, hey, Ken, can you smile for the camera? And Ken's like, I am smiling. So we get in the truck with him, and I look out the window, and I see all these crosses on the side of the road. I saw 30 or 40 of these crosses as we were driving. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. I didn't know that people here in Montana are very religious. I'm sure there's a lot of cool and interesting things we could learn about the Christians here in Montana. But Ken was like, no, 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 no. Those aren't markers for religion. Those are gravestones of people that have died on this highway. Those are markers of where they died. Because apparently we were driving on one of the most dangerous roads in the entire country. And what happens is there's no traffic lights or no signs or anything like that. And at night, a lot of animals run across the road and people hit them and die. And there's also a lot of bears and other animals in the mountains that kick rocks off the hills. And that's probably what we ran over when we were driving. And so we get to town, and the Muslims there, they just pray in a small little classroom at their local university. And we're panicking because the next day, we have to go to Fargo, North Dakota. And Fargo is probably about probably 8 to 10 hour drive from where we were. And so we got to get this car fixed first thing in the morning if we're going to make it in time to get that blog post up. And so we're like, okay, we get up super early, and we go to the mechanic, and the mechanic takes forever. But he ends up fixing the car, thank goodness. He was the only mechanic in town. He fixes the car, but by the time we're getting ready to hit the road, we know we're not going to make it to Fargo. If it's an 8 to 10 hour drive, it was already like 2 o'clock at that point. we're going to miss the Maghrib prayer. We're going to miss breaking the fast. We're like, what do we do? We can't go to Fargo. We need a backup plan. So I go on Google, and I typed in Muslims in North Dakota. And Google typed in back, did you mean Muslims in Chicago? And we found this article that was written about 4 or 5 years ago about a mosque in Ross, North Dakota. A town of only 40 or 50 people apparently has the first mosque that was ever built in the United States. Now you're probably thinking like, Ross? Why not New York? Why not Chicago? Why not Los Angeles? And so we were curious, like, I never even heard of this place. And so we're trying to find out more information about this mosque. And there's no website for the mosque. There's no address. There's no phone number to call. And this article was written 4 or 5 years ago, so we don't even know if this place even exists. And so we're like, what do we do? And so we start searching on Google Maps, and we find a place called Muslim Cemetery. And there wasn't an address for the place, but we figured, okay, if there's a Muslim cemetery, there's got to be a mosque nearby. But there's no address, but we looked on Google Maps, and we saw that there was an intersection. So we said, okay, well, if we have the intersection, we can put that in our GPS, and we can use that as our way to get to Ross, North Dakota. So completely relying on this intersection, we drove 5 or 6 hours out to Ross, North Dakota, completely relying on this GPS. So we head out to North Dakota, and North Dakota is a beautiful state as well, like lots of lush, farmscape for miles upon miles on end. But the frustrating thing was there was no highway sign, so we didn't even know if we were going the right way. There's no gas stations or shops to ask for directions, so we're completely relying on this GPS directions. And so as we're driving, my friend, he starts calling people in Ross, trying to get a hold of people, trying to get some more information about this mosque. And we end up finding a woman named Lila, who's the caretaker of the mosque. And she said, well, I can't meet with you guys. It's a little last minute notice, but so I can't open the mosque for you, but you're more than welcome to look at the mosque from the outside. I'm like, okay, thank you. Really appreciate it. So we get to North Dakota, and we finally get to Ross, and I'm starting to panic because the sun is starting to set. It's almost Maghrib time. And the sun is starting to set, and so I was like, okay, we got to get this blog post up. We don't even know where this mosque is. And I'm looking at the GPS, and I have no idea where I'm going because there's no sign that says Islamic Center or mosque up ahead or anything like that. But the GPS tells us take a final turn down this dirt road, and the intersection should be right up ahead. And so I take the turn, and I look out all the way out into the horizon, and I see absolutely nothing. I'm like, where's this place? We try to call Lila back. It goes right to voicemail. She's not picking up the phone. It's time to break the fast. We don't have a blog post. We don't have anything to eat. What are we going to do? This whole thing this whole plan is falling apart. I'm getting so mad. I'm getting so angry. And then I look to the right of my window, and I see this. Yeah. And so you can see, the crescent gate in front of the mosque, the crescent being a symbol often associated with Islam. And there's the mosque. And it almost looks like it was a mosque that somebody just dropped onto this prairie land, right? And where the sun is setting, my friend is standing there. He's like, look, I found the cemetery. And so we found things like Nazira Omar, born 1908. Ahmed Jaha, a Korean War veteran. We found Muslims that were World War I veterans, Muslims that were World War II veterans, Muslims born in the 1800s, Muslims born in the 1700s. And of all places, they were living in Ross, North Dakota. And I was fascinated by this because, I'm a history nerd. And I was under the impression that Muslims came to the United States in the 60s and 70s from South Asia, the Middle East, and then in the 90s from Somalia and Bosnia. But who are these Muslims who came in the 1800s and the 1700s? And of all places, how did they end up in Ross, North Dakota? And so we tried to call Lila again and then finally got a hold of her. And we said, Lila, we would love to meet with you in the morning and learn some more about this magical place. And so she agrees to meet with us in the morning, and she opens up the mosque. And inside the mosque, this is all that's inside. It's a very, very small place. and there's a small place to pray, and then a few photographs of her ancestors and her relatives. And this is Lila. I think she's like a fifth or sixth generation Muslim American. Her ancestors came to the U.S. in the 1700s, and that's her son Greg. And that's how big the mosque is. It's a very, very small mosque. And so I asked her, I was like, Lila, of all places, how did you guys end up in Ross, North Dakota? And she told me that in the 1700s and 1800s, when the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey, was spreading throughout the Middle East, a lot of Syrian and Lebanese farmers didn't want to go to war. They didn't want to get drafted and join the army. So they heard that there was a law in the U.S. called the Homestead Act. And this law said if you farmed the land for a few years, you could keep it. And so thousands of Syrian and Lebanese farmers came to places like Ross, North Dakota, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Toledo, Ohio, Evansville, Indiana, and they lived there peacefully for generations. And Lila I think she's 91 or 92, I can't remember. And I asked her, I was like, Lila, you went to school in like the 20s and 30s. Like, race relations were bad enough in this country between white people and black people. What was it like for you, being not only the only minority, but the only Muslim, the only Arab, in such a racially divided time? And she said, I didn't have any problems at all. It was fine, because at the end of the day, we were all farmers. Didn't matter what you believed. We were all there to harvest the crops together. Didn't matter where you came from and what you believed. And this is a narrative that we were seeing a lot around this country. Like, there's a narrative that you see on television that Muslims in the United States are oppressed and they're victims of hate crimes and they're victims of violence and have trouble at the airport and things like that. And yes, there's these individual cases that are happening, but to say that that's even remotely a widespread thing is completely ridiculous. And so it was frustrating for me because what I was seeing on television wasn't mirroring what I was seeing in reality in places like this and other places all around the country, that Muslims are actually living very peacefully and very comfortably side by side with their neighbors. And so Lila, as we're getting ready to leave, tells us to sign the guest book. And I sign the guest book and I write, I'll never forget the contributions that you and your family have made to this country. And I hope nobody else will ever forget. And I started to think about it. You know, one of the reasons we got a chance to visit this awesome piece of history is because we ran over that rock in Montana. I'm going to fly through some of these. Actually, I do want to tell this story. So South Dakota. North Dakota and South Dakota are interesting places for many reasons. You know, like I said, it does have that rich history of Muslims coming in the 1700s and 1800s. It's also where the waves of Scandinavian immigrants came. And so places like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, those are the places where you see a lot of, you know, Scandinavian immigrants. And even a lot of the people that work in the Danish embassy that are American, are from Wisconsin. They come from very rich Scandinavian heritage as well. But anywho, we went to South Dakota, next slide, and we met this guy named David, who ethnically, he grew up in the U.S., but he has Scandinavian roots. And David, he was a part of a motorcycle gang. And, you know, used to get into trouble and all this other stuff. And he embraced Islam. And then he was still kind of running with the wrong crowd. And even though he was Muslim, he got involved in some crazy things. And he ended up going to prison because he tried to rob someone. And so he's in prison, and he starts thinking about, man, what am I doing with my life? And, you know, he'd been married 3 times already, and he felt like he was a bad father to his kids, and this and that. And he's starting to put his life into perspective. And he says in prison, you know what? I'm going to change. And he said, but the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to get married. And so he found this magazine called the Pink Pages. It was a matrimonial magazine of people that post their information when they're looking for spouses for marriage. And I asked David, I was like, why did you try so hard to find a wife while you're in prison? Like, why didn't you wait until you got out? He said, because I wanted whoever was going to marry me to see me for who I am. You know, this is who I am, and I wanted them to see me at my ugliest, and it can only get better from there. But here's the thing, he's a convict. Who wants to marry, you know, someone that was convicted as a criminal? And so he starts corresponding, next slide, with this woman named Noor. Noor was a widow and she had 4 children, and she lived in Malaysia. She was an Islamic school principal. And David and Noor started sending letters to each other, you know, back and forth. And they fell in love and decided to get married. And so Noor dropped her, imagine this, she dropped her, without even meeting this guy, dropped her entire life in Malaysia to move halfway around the world to South Dakota to marry a guy that's in prison. And so she moved, and what's interesting is Noor and David have now been married happily for 14 or 15 years. And next slide. And so David had 1 more year on his prison sentence when they got married. And because David said, while I'm in prison, Noor, I want you to get acquainted with my family. I want you to live with my family in South Dakota for a year. And so they did their nikah, the Islamic wedding ceremony, while he was in prison. So that's them on their wedding day. And so they used to write these letters back and forth to each other. And I asked them, like, do you guys still have those letters? And they're like, oh, we have to find them. We don't know. Like, we keep them in a box, but we haven't looked at them. And so they revisit their letters in this video. They hadn't read these things in 15 years. And so this is just one letter that Noor wrote to David.
I didn't know that you kept it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And all your letters is in Singapore.
So we both kept each other's letters.
Yeah, it's all over there. So I didn't bring it here. I thought maybe one day we'll bring back.
Yeah, they've never opened them since.
Ano, ketulinanmu bisa diobati luka yang terlalu lama. Pelukan hangat dan sentuhan yang lembut kurasa diriku dalam dirimu. Ini adalah anugerah yang telah. I want you to listen to me, to really listen with your heart. I want you to be unafraid to express my feelings towards you and unashamed to express my fears. I want you to talk to me about things that really matter. When you are open and honest with me, I feel valued in this relationship. I want you to touch me, for genuine affection can heal so much hurts. I want a warm hug or gentle touch helps me feel connected to you. These are the greatest gifts you can give me. Yeah. Thank you for keeping. But now we are grandparents. You know why it's quiet? The angel passed by.
One of the issues that a lot of Muslims in the U.S. are dealing with is this sense of home, this sense of identity. A lot of Muslims that are growing up in the U.S., their parents are from different countries, from India, Pakistan, the Middle East, Somalia, Palestine, wherever. And so they don't feel like they fit in. They're like, okay, I'm not Indian, I'm not Muslim, I'm not American, what am I? I don't really feel like I fit into one particular group. But the group of people that are having even the most issues are converts. When a convert who embraces Islam and who comes from maybe a white background, he goes to a mosque that's predominantly Arab or predominantly Bengali or predominantly, you know, Asian or what have you, he might feel left out because once he walks in the mosque, people put their cultural interpretation on him and say, oh, you need to change your name, you need to dress this way, you need to grow out your beard, you need to dress like this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And that comes very confusing. People try to force this false identity on these people. And so, and this is happening all over the world, this frustration. And so we found a place in California called the Talif Collective. And their motto there is, come as you are to Islam as it is. So let's break that down. Come as you are, which is a lyric from a Nirvana song. Come as you are, meaning doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how religious you are or how unreligious you are, you're welcome here. As long as you have belief in God, you're welcome. And if you're not Muslim, you're welcome here too. But come as you are to Islam as it is. Islam is the way of life. It is, permanent. So respect that. So if you party, if you drink, you do whatever, do that out there. Don't bring that here. We're not going to promote what you're doing. We're not going to judge you. This is a safe space, but please respect this sacred space. And it's a very, very simple philosophy that's really gone a long way, because I remember praying that night, and I'm praying, and right next to me is, I guess you'd call him like a Salafi looking dude who had like the, like a long beard. He had like the thobe and, the hat and everything. And then next to him was a guy covered in tattoos and piercings, and he had like a mohawk. And then next to him was this Asian guy with, the little kurta, the little Indian outfit. And then next to him was a guy with like a big rapper chain and a big basketball hat backwards and, baggy pants. And we were all praying peacefully side by side. And any of these people would look kind of weird standing out in any mosque, but for some reason, everyone just felt welcome here. And so the guy who created this place is Osama Cannon, also one of the sharpest dressers I know, like that bow tie. Next slide. And Osama gave a little talk that night, just talking about, the inclusive nature of, what Islam should be. And in the congregation, it was a jam-packed place that night. And I met this guy, Jason Kalibo. And I was hanging out with Jason, and I was talking to him. Jason had been Muslim for about a year or two. And he starts talking to me about how we as human beings, forget about Muslims for a second, we as human beings have overcomplicated our lives so much over centuries. We've just added and complicated and created all these divisions. And one of the big problems in the Muslim community is, religion and faith is a very personal relationship between a human being and God. And what we've done is we've intervened in other people's relationships between them and God and told them, you need to pray like this, you need to do this, you need to dress like that. And we've gotten in the way of that very, very simple, basic relationship. And we need to get back to those basics, because Islam is a religion supposed to simplify our way of life. And I started to think about, all this, complications and stuff that I've added in my own life, all these divisions we've kind of created with one another, all these groups we formed and cliques and all these cultural bubbles that we formed, and realized that, Islam is a religion that, is the opposite of that and try to promote this inclusiveness. Anyway, that night, Jason leaves, and I'm staying over at the mosque that night. And I'm trying to put up the blog post, and I don't know what to write about. And I was like, man, it was interesting what he said, but I was like, I don't know how that's going to turn into a story. I don't know what I have here. And so it was about 1:30 in the morning, and Jason comes back in. Actually, it's about 1:45. He comes back in, and he's like, hey, man, you should come to my wedding. And I was like, I don't live here. I'm from out of town. I met this guy. First of all, I'm like, why are you inviting me to your wedding? Dude, I just met you like an hour ago. And then he's like, yeah, you should come to my wedding. I was like, but I don't live here. I'm doing this road trip, 30 mosques in 30 days, and I'm going to Las Vegas tomorrow, and I'm not going to be here. And he's like, no, my wedding's happening now. And I was like, oh, yeah, but we're leaving in the morning. Like, I can't make it tonight. Like I told you, I don't live here. He's like, no. It's happening right now. You want to be the best man at my wedding? I was like, right now. He's like, yeah, right now, come on. And I was like, okay. And so at 1:45 in the morning, I was the best man for Jason and April's wedding. And it was such a beautiful setting, because this goes back to all these complications that we've made as human beings. Like you go to a lot of Muslim weddings, and they'll spend, I don't know what the conversion rate is, but they'll spend like 50, 60, 70,000 American dollars on the most ridiculous things. Like I went to one wedding, they spent about $50,000 just on flowers at the wedding. Like I would be more impressed if they just took a box and put $50,000 in it and then put that on the stage. That would look more beautiful than like all these like fancy flowers. Like, wow, they have $50,000. That's really cool, right? But we've complicated this so much, and this was such a simple, pure, intimate, romantic, like wedding that I was a part of, and so soulful, so much life that was there, and not this materialistic and all this like junk that we've accumulated over the years. And it was Jason, April, myself, Osama Cannon officiated the wedding, and then like 2 or 3 of their friends. And it was honestly one of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been to. And that night, we had the wedding reception at McDonald's because it's the only thing that was open. And we're there, and the bride, instead of cutting the cake, we cut the filet-o-fish sandwich. We're sitting there and we're talking to Jason and his friends, and I start talking to this one girl. And I start sharing, this whole philosophy of, Islam is supposed to be such a simple religion. We've complicated our lives so much. And, she started sharing some of her ideas. And then she looks at my sneakers, and she's like, hey, I like your Puma sneakers. And I look at her sneakers, and I'm like, I like your Puma sneakers too. And so 5 or 6 months later, we got engaged, and we're actually getting married at the Talif Collective later this year. So it's amazing, like, the kind of people that you come across. And so if it wasn't for the fact that I was there that night, because what happened is my friend, the photographer, actually left that night. He's like, hey, I'm going to go to hang out at this coffee shop. Do you want to come? I was like, no, I'm going to stay here and get the blog up. He's like, oh, we'll do it in the morning. Like, no, I'm going to do it right now. So if I went to the coffee shop, I would never have met my wife-to-be. So it's always like if I didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened kind of thing. Next slide. Oh, and that's one of the people. That's an example of like a guy that you'll see at the Talif Collective. Long beard, then boom, covered in tattoos. This is an interesting story. There's a city called Islamville, South Carolina, and it's very similar to Islamburg in New York, in upstate New York. And go forward one slide, one more. And so the story behind this community, how this city came about, there's a sheikh in Pakistan, Sheikh Jilani, I think his name was, and he instructed people, he told them, don't live in the cities. Cities are bad place. They're too tough to raise your kids. You need to form your own Muslim communities. Well, you don't have to do that, but that was just what his beliefs were. And it's just one school of thought says, oh, you shouldn't, mix. You should form your own little Muslim town. And so all these people listened to him and said, okay, you know what? We're going to go form our own town. So go back one slide. Yeah. So here's what's interesting, though. So Islamville, South Carolina, the congregation there is almost all African American, black. And what's interesting is their sheikh is Pakistani. And so what's interesting is because they follow him, they've adopted all his mannerisms. So they all speak very fluent Urdu. And like I walk in, like, I'm like, how are you bobbling your head? Like, where'd you get that from? He even has the uncle belly, like, going on. And it's amazing, like, people from different cultures, like, kind of adopting these mannerisms. Like, next slide. Next one. And that's Kenny. He makes some of the best biryani and chicken tikka masala, like, I've ever tasted. And these women, like, even walk like aunties and everything, and, like, they make amazing chai. And it's amazing, like, some of the things you come across. Another cool thing about this town, all the streets in the town are named after the 99 names of Allah. So we had to turn on Ar-Rahman Avenue to get to, down Al-Jabbar Alley and all these other things. So it's cool, like, how much, time and love was put into forming this city. How are we doing on time? We good on time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We'll have a break in maybe half an hour, so that's fine.
Okay, yeah, I should be done with it. So we went to Florida, and we decided just for fun to hang out with some of the kids and ask them a few questions. And so we met this kid named Tabish, and we started asking him some questions. Next slide.
So where do you live? What state?
America.
You live in the state of America?
No, Florida. So what are we having?
an interview. So what city do you live in?
Jacksonville.
You like Jacksonville?
Would you hold this?
Huh?
So we tried to ask Stabish some serious questions, but he was too busy having a love affair with an ice cream sandwich.
So tell me now, Davish, what is Ramadan?
Ramadan is a celebration of.
Can you turn that light off?
No, get away, let him answer himself.
There's a celebration of the Quran and we fast in it, and also in Ramadan we have to eat a day we only eat after Maghrib.
Why do we fast in Ramadan?
Because
Get away, please, can you step away?
because no, I don't actually know that.
Oh yeah, here's an interesting story. So CNN, a lot of people heard about a project through CNN, and in 2010, CNN sent two reporters, sorry about hiccups, two reporters with us to travel and visit the mosque with us. And so they came with us to Atlanta, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida, and Mobile, Alabama. And I remember we were driving from Atlanta, Georgia down to Jacksonville, Florida, and we're driving down the road, and about halfway between Georgia and Florida, we go through this very small town called Chula, Georgia, a town of only 800, 900 people. And I'm driving that day, and I look out the window, and I see this huge Confederate flag just waving in the air. And so if you don't know the Confederate flag, it was a flag that the Confederacy was the side of the American Civil War that promoted slavery, and that was caused a rift between the U.S. and the 1800s. And so here was a Confederate flag waving in the air like 150, 200 years later. And so I'm driving, and I look out the window, and I see this flag, and I'm like, whoa, this place is too racistly awesome to pass up. Guys, we have to go inside and check this out. And like, you're crazy. I'm like, no, I'm not. Let's do this. And so we pull over, and we find out that it's some Confederate souvenir shop. And as we pull up to this place, there's these three angry, redneck-looking dudes that are sitting in front of this shop. And so it was three people. There must have been like 5 teeth among them, right? And so I'm about to get out of the car, and Robert, who's a videographer for CNN, he's a black guy. And as I'm getting out of the car, he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, Aman, please, I'm begging you. Aman, please don't go in. Please don't go in. I was like, man, whatever. This is America. You guys are a bunch of scaredy cats. Just forget about it. We'll be fine. And so I step out of the car, and as soon as I step out of the car, these guys are like, hey, welcome. Make yourself at home. Great day today, isn't it? Welcome, welcome. Come, pull up a chair. And we had this really, really cool conversation. And it started to make me think, because here I was thinking that these guys were going to be prejudiced towards me, but I was the one that was actually being prejudiced towards them, thinking that they were racist and they were bigoted. Now, granted, this is a Confederate place. We, I just mentioned the slavery association tied to the flag, and I don't want to downplay that, but these guys were very kind to us and very, very warm and receptive. I can only hold them accountable for how kind they were treating us. So, but this whole idea of what is the cultural baggage that I bring to the table is something that I was reflecting on a lot. And I think a lot of Muslims kind of deal with that. They think no matter where we go, oh, everyone hates us. Like when I was in university, I had a friend, I remember one time, we were a Muslim friend, and we were studying for a test, and he failed it. And he failed it, and he's like, you know why I failed the test? Like, why? He's like, teacher's Jewish. And I'm like, dude, you were playing Call of Duty on Xbox with me last night. Like, you didn't fail because she's Jewish. You failed because you're stupid. Like, and it's just those kind of things that, people always kind of expect people to be racist towards us, but in reality, maybe it's us being racist towards them, thinking that they, have this animosity. And so we start driving, and we get to Jacksonville, Florida, and we find another place that's too racistly awesome to pass up as well. There's a word in Arabic called a sheikh. And a sheikh can mean like a scholar or a leader or something like that. So we find this place. Sheikh sandwiches, home of the camel rider. So check this out. This is a Middle Eastern / Muslim themed restaurant with nothing but pork products on the menu. And the owner is Palestinian. And so, next slide. And so Wayne, the reporter for CNN, orders the camel rider sandwich, or as I call it, the Big Mac of bigotry, right? And so there he is taking a bite into racism, and inside this thing has like bacon, ham, pepperoni, salami. All it needed was like a middle finger and an American flag inside of it, right, to complete the sandwich. And so it's these kind of like crazy things that you only experience when you're on the road. Just gonna fly through some of this. Actually, this was interesting. There's a rapper named Freeway. I don't know how many of you guys listen to hip hop, but there's a rapper on Jay-Z's label named Freeway. And he's from Philadelphia. And here's the interesting thing about Philadelphia. I remember when I went to Philadelphia, I was there and I met a guy who was walking down the street who had a long beard. He had the little, kufi. He had his pants rolled up above his ankles, and he had the little siwak, the little toothbrush, the little wood toothbrush. And he's walking down the street, so he looked like a very traditional, Muslim. And he's walking down the street, and I said, "Hey, salam alaikum." And he looks at me, he's like, "What? I ain't no Muslim." And then he walks away. And then I see another guy who's wearing a thobe and kufi. And he's also wearing the izar, the little the man skirt kind of thing underneath the thobe. And I said salams to him. He's like, "What? Don't you ever call me a Muslim." And I'm so confused. And apparently the Muslims have influenced the hip hop fashion so much in Philadelphia. That's just how people dress. You can go to any hip hop clothing store, and if you roll up your pants above your ankles, that's called the Philly Capri. And Freeway is a well-known rapper in the U.S., and he's kind of influenced a lot of hip-hop culture as well, when people try to emulate his beard and things like that. And so what happened, though, Freeway started taking his religion a little bit more seriously. And in 2004, he left music altogether. He's just like, I can't handle it. He made Hajj, and he came from a very conservative he followed very conservative traditional scholars and these scholars said to him, music's forbidden, you shouldn't do that. And so he left music. But music is in his heart and it's in his soul. It's what he's passionate about. And so he finds himself in this clash. He feels that music is forbidden, but he also loves doing it. And so he doesn't know how to deal with that friction. He has so much. He's been a rapper his whole life. So he's like, this is my identity. What do I do? This is who I am. And even though most Muslims believe that nothing's wrong with music, but there's the group of people out there that say, music is wrong and things like that. I'm not in a position to say what's right and what's wrong, but there is, a debate in the community. But anyway, Freeway, we're hanging out with him, we're talking to him. He's a great guy, and he was nice enough to hang out with us. And we asked him, hey, do you mind, rapping a few verses for us? Just a little freestyle. And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And so we're hanging out with him, and we thought it'd be even more funny because he was in a parking lot with us. He said, hey, what if we went inside that Indian grocery store and had you rap in there? And so we walked inside the Indian grocery store, and we told the owner, hi, we have a rapper with us. Is it okay if we film a quick music video in here? And the guy was confused. He's like, okay. So here's Freeway doing a quick freestyle, just rapping about this conflict he has between, his love for music and then people telling him that, music's forbidden.
Yo, my name's Fully Freeway.
There's a little bit of profanity, so I do apologize in advance.
Down with 30 months, 30 days. I'm in the aisle of this Chinese store. My name's Fully Free and I am a ball. I get it down. I'm coming for the crown everywhere. Everywhere I go, they love it when I come around. You know how we do, you know what it is, team early in the building and we repping for the kids. I started off not wanting much, throw some low shirts and a pair of Jordans was success. Over a decade later, wiser and greater, so you know I'm bringing more in. Yeah, we touring, now my pockets flooded like New Orleans. Chevy so heavy, it'll break the levees if you sit it on it, honest. My nigga nut, yo, Freezer, you a mess. They often tell me, Freezer, you the best, but my Akis tell me, Freezer, you should stop. You are straying from the hop, and you don't want to be sinning when you die, because that's how you will stand in front of God. This is making me depressed. Yeah, I'm living with regrets, but my regrets are most people's lusts. To get the fame and the checks, pressure bust pipes and I pray I don't bust. First thing I do in the morning is I make voodoo and pray. Fudge it, but it's sad cause I be on the corner by the door, trying to feed my daughter and my son. I got a gun and if they gon' owe me funds, I'm trying to smash him by acid. I know the truth, so am I worse than the Kappas, and I jeopardizing my hereafter for this earth. See my cousin Hemi get blasted by the cops, put in the box, so I gotta put my passion in a verse, put his casket in a hearse. El Oxford Masjid, the same spot I took Shahada gift in the curse. The shit hurts, shit ratchet where I live. I back to the fence, gotta repent by my grid. Looking for the cops to kill my cousin Hemi, now I'm 4-4 mad gripping, AR ad with him. We need to be somewhere reading Quran, but we channel live, all we do is spark madism. But we still trying to make it to Jannah, fuck it. I hope we all there, see him there, me there. But just know, if you knew that code, beware, and you can build your faith in the ranks of Salat to each share. Yeah.
So he's kind of comparing, you know, the 5 daily prayers to like his day like hustling on the streets. So it's that kind of clash of conflict that he kind of has to deal with. This is the last story I want to share with you guys, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. One of the hardest things for me, traveling so much, is being away from family. Being away from my brothers and my parents and things like that. And as we were traveling in 2011, I had a very serious family crisis happening at home. And it was so stressful for me to travel, do all this press coverage and be on television, try to be happy, but there was just so much trauma, you know, going on at home. And so we were supposed to finish our last day in New York, but I told my friend Bassam, I was like, I can't finish this with you, I need to go home. And so I decided to surprise my parents in Ohio. The night before Eid, probably about 11:45 at night, I flew in really, really late, and I just snuck in, and I filmed their reaction.
30 months to 30 days. My parents had no idea that I'm here in Columbus. We did a last-minute flight. They just moved here to Columbus literally yesterday, so we're going to go inside and surprise them.
She said, how'd you get here? She's like, how'd you guys get here from the airport? Everyone's here? Now she's thanking God.
Surprise! I can't believe without my mom and dad.
When did it come?
An hour ago.
And so, you know, Eid is supposed to be that time of family, you know, that celebration. You know, Eid's celebrating, you know, a happy and successful Ramadan. And it's that time of community. And so we went to, and the year before, we went to Dearborn, Michigan. If you know anything about Dearborn, it has the largest population of Arabs outside the Middle East. And so we were really excited to, you know, visit this large community and hang out with them. And so we went to this mosque where they told us there's going to be thousands of people at the Eid prayer. And so we go to the mosque, and we end up missing the prayer. We overslept, and we're so mad. We're like, oh, I can't believe we missed the prayer. But the Muslims were still like in the gymnasium, kind of socializing and congratulating each other. So we hung out with them for a little bit, just taking pictures and things like that. But in Michigan, and even where I grew up in Ohio, we have this tradition called house hopping. And what that is a lot of people live around the mosque. And so after the Eid prayer, once everyone's done praying, they race back to their homes, they cook up a few meals, and then they open up their doors to anyone and everyone. And so it doesn't matter who you are, you can walk right in and help yourself to a meal. And you go from house to house to house hopping. And it was really cool because in New York, we don't have that. You don't have flat hopping or apartment hopping. Like someone would call the police on you if you walked inside their place. And it was just really cool to kind of relive that tradition that I had as a child. Like I remember when I was a kid, my brothers and I, we used to have contests, like how many houses could you go to after Eid prayer. And in 1999, I set the record. I did 18 houses. So we just jumped right in and went house hopping in Michigan. We just had fun. We just took pictures of people taking pictures. We took pictures of little kids choking each other. Very Muslim pose there. And as we're in this person's house, somebody sends us a text message. And the text message said, epic ping pong battle happening between two uncles. You guys need to come downstairs right now. And so we went downstairs and we found this. And so my friend took the picture and he showed me his viewfinder and he said, Aman, you know what? I think we're done. And I started to think about it because, here we were house hopping, going from house to house to house. It was very similar to mosque hopping around the country. People were opening up their doors to us everywhere we went. And if I really wanted to capture, I don't know how to describe it in words, but I feel like this photo just really captures that sense of joy, that sense of happiness that if I wanted to summarize the Muslim American community in one photo, it would be this one. I always like to end on that note, to really show that sense of joy and that sense of happiness that people have. So yeah, if you want to take a break, I do have some other stuff we can talk about, but if you have any questions or anything like that, if you guys want to take a break, then afterwards we can talk about what the new project is and give you guys a sneak peek at the 30 Mosques film if you want. So.
You want to take a break or keep?
All right, keep going. It'll only be like 10 more minutes.
I would think keep going.
Keep going? It'll only be like 10 more minutes. Okay, I'll keep going. So a lot of people said, okay, you did 30 mosques, 30 days around New York. You did 30 states. How about you do 30 countries? How about you do 30 planets? Are there Somalis in Neptune? You need to go, right? And so here's an idea that we came up with. Well, first of all, for the past 2 years, we had 2 filmmakers travel with us that are producing a documentary for a film. And you guys are really lucky. I have not seen any of the footage of the film until yesterday. I literally got it yesterday. And so you guys are going to be the first group of people that get a chance to see the 30 Mosques film. And so the film is going to be very different than my friend and I's project. My friend Bassam, who I was on the project, doing the project with, during this whole road trip, he was about to get married. And he was very nervous because he felt very insecure. He's like, am I going to be a good husband? I got to provide for this girl. Am I going to be able to do that? He's had a lot of insecurities. And I was dealing with my own issues at home with my family and things like that. And a lot of these insecurities, this uncertainty, this anxiety, this stress kind of represents what a lot of American Muslims are going through. And so the filmmakers are using our lives behind the scenes on this road trip to kind of tell the story about the broader Muslim community. So here's a quick sneak peek what the film looks like. Again, I just got this last night, so you guys are the first crowd to see it.
So when you're in high school, you can join many different clubs. You can be, or people go to sports. Most people go to sports or they go to academics, right? And then there's a certain group of people that go to debate, that go into audio visual club, right? Like that was me. Like I remember once my dad picked me up from a debate tournament that we lost, and he was like, and it was bad. We lost really bad. We went like 0-3, and this was like a really big tournament, and we were just devastated. We get in the car, and my dad just looks at me and he's like, you know, why do you do any sport? But I do still feel like that kid from debate, and you know, it's okay because you know I choose that girl from debate, so it kind of works out.
I live with my uncle because I don't have money. And I'm hoping I'm making money now, so, you know, gotta get married, so.
My name is Aman. Aman Ali, I'm a writer and a stand-up comic.
Like the only time that most people are used to seeing Indian on stage in front of a crowd of white people, he's at the National Spelling Bee, right? That's like the only time.
This is at the Talith Collective, that place I was telling you guys about before. It was jam-packed that night. And you're gonna see like how different the groups of people are.
The wisdom in Allah asking us to leave our food and leave our drink is so that we can see that then outside of Ramadan it should be easy for you to leave things that are not permissible for you. You guys know how to catch a monkey? Y'all don't got kids. If you got kids, you know how to catch a monkey. This is true. They take a tree that's got a small, like a medium-sized hole in it, and they put something sweet inside of the trunk of the tree. And in order to get it, like rice or like a banana, the monkey has to close his little monkey hand. And then he gets the stuff. But then what? He can't pull his hand out. So then they go and catch him. And all he would have to do is what? What do you have to do? Just let go. Through Ramadan, we got to figure out what do we just need to let go of. And you think of the conversations we get into, these circular arguments, these circular conversations. Who's right? No, you're right. I'm wrong. Right? I know I'm right. No, you're wrong. Tit for tat. Tit for tat. You know, my bad. Because in any situation, at least you could have done better.
We're getting like less than like 2,000 hits a day, and all we get is like comments like, "MashaAllah, brother. Alhamdulillah, brother. You're doing well." And it's just like either that or it's like people hating on us. It's just like,
What would define success in terms of who we're reaching?
what do you mean?
We get plenty of comments from non-Muslims and mainstream organizations that
If we had people coming from these different networks, if we had people coming from, I don't know, like Gizmodo, or like we had people coming from like Boing, and then like all these like non-Muslim, like we reach out larger than like our small like hijabi network.
and we have. Yes, it's important to let this project be consumed by as many people as possible, but if you make that your only reason to do it, then you know it's a dangerous place.
No, but the important thing is that we actually get a reach, right? Because like right now we're not getting a reach. The only reason why people gave a shit about us was because of the ground zero controversy. Other than that, nobody else gave a shit about us. Look at us right now. Nobody gives a shit about us because, you know, because Muslims and like all this Islamophobia stuff is not happening right now. If somebody's burning Qurans right now, just watch. People would contact us. So that's the thing. Our legitimacy is only based on that, right?
So,
Because people still see us as a response project.
right, but you're undermining the current platform where you have this.
We don't have a current platform. We're starting from scratch. So I'm trying to
So
say
you have a website, 30months.com is a platform.
That's it, exactly. Which is like
Why isn't that good enough? Why does it always have to be like
every day that we're not here with our family, we have to make sure that we're making the best of it. You know?
and so is this wasting your time?
No, it's not wasting my time.
I mean, if you got a problem, you know, whine about it and do the same thing you always do, like bottle it up and then go call your wife and cry about it. If you've got some other issues, why don't you talk to her about it? Because I really don't give a shit.
Yeah, we got into a fight that night. When you're on the road for 30 days, it happens.
This is probably from middle school. This is from middle school. Best poetry performance, 8th grade. All of middle school. And then there's a CX one that when we conceded to your in quarterfinals.
So you got quarterfinals. I think we got first place.
You get first place.
I think we got first place.
Yeah, but you didn't win.
No, we got first place, but we didn't get the first place.
No, you didn't win that tournament. No, you didn't. Somebody else
made a home for it.
Because I remember like we were gonna get changed or something. Right? Remember the uncle at that one place took a hammer and he started with church trying to make it bigger?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I can make it bigger. Bam, bam. Dude, you just like ruined. Can I see the finish on it?
Yeah, it's kind of denty. On the other side.
It's a nice ring.
I think my family comes in here. Yeah.
You called me just few minutes ago. You know? Sorry,
I don't know, my friend. It just confuses.
Parking. When I park, I take 2 parking. Okay.
I feel better. You want to take some medicine? But it's health, like heart-wise. He's worried it's medicine. He's worried about his kidneys. Like how medicine will affect his kidneys. Every year there's an expected decline.
Just want to said that when his daily routine now is taking you to work and then picking you up, he says he gets very jealous. That you
My dad had to stop working because of his health condition. So he gets jealous of my mom going to work.
He said he's very jealous because you get to work and he doesn't. He wants you at home. Why doesn't that matter? Why is working so important?
To be healthy. Keep me healthy.
That's not keeping you healthy. That was the problem with your retirement.
Something not right inside me.
What do you mean?
The last 2 days I didn't do nothing but sleep.
think about the future, our kids, and inshallah God going to give us the grandchildren, and
Let me live my life my way. And know I could take one day at a time now. I might be hiding something from you guys. And now I'll tell what I'm going to do in the future. And now right now I need medical attention.
Yeah.
To medicines.
Are you worried about that? About work?
All right. All right, one more quick thing. Another thing we discovered as we were doing this project in 2011, there was people all around the world that were emailing us saying that they were doing 30, they read our blog and they decided to go to 30 mosques in their areas. And so the Mozilla Foundation, the guys who created the web browser Firefox, heard about this as well, and they gave us this money and this technology to do something with this initiative. And so we had people all over the world. We had people in Indonesia. Their website was called Pink Mosques, where a group of Muslim women were traveling all around Indonesia, blogging about that experience. And in Holland, 30 Dagen, 30 Mosqueen, and then Chicago. And it got us thinking because a lot of people would write on our blog things like, so interesting, but I got to ask, where are the sisters? And another person said, I want to see women do a 30-day, 30 mosque road trip. And so we started thinking about it some more. I was like, why should we, my friend and I, have all the fun? Here we are traveling and getting a chance to really experience all these other cultures. Why are we have to be the only ones doing this? So we came up with this idea, what we're doing this year. It's going to be an interactive film. We want people all around the world. If they can't go to 30 mosques in 30 days, not everybody can. Last year we had 37 different 30 mosques in 30 days around the world. Everywhere from like France, Argentina, China, South Africa, Chicago, DC, New York, Toronto, the UK, some other places. But anywho, so we wanted to come up with something. How do we bring that all together? How do we create this experience? Because Ramadan is traditionally a very community-oriented month of worship. Everyone worships together. Everyone breaks their fast together. How can we showcase that? How can we bring that all together? So we came up with this idea for an interactive film. And so if people uploaded their stories, their photos, their videos, and text, whatever, and sent this, we could take those stories and weave it together and make one giant film to show all these different stories. And if we made it as simple as possible, where people could upload it, as simple as if they had an app, we created the app where you can just record yourself and then upload. And so we decided to test this project out. And we reached out to a couple of people in different countries. And we, my friend and I, as directors, are directing this film. And we told them, this is the scene I want you guys to shoot. I want you guys to film that last hour before it's time to break the fast. What do you do in that last hour? And so people around the world filmed that last hour, filmed video, took photos, told stories. And this is what we were able to put together.
It's the last hour before we break bread. We've pushed ourselves to new limits.
I'm so hungry.
And now we prepare to come back to Earth. We gather together, ready to fill our stomachs.
Celebrating Ramadan, breaking the fast. Little late, unfortunately.
But find ourselves filled with something else. It's a feeling of hope. There's a connection. Something we didn't feel before. This was the last hour. And soon enough, we'll do it all over again.
So that's our mission with this project, is to not only travel with it and talk about it, but really bring people on board and try to create this interactive film. So as I'm going around traveling, talking about this project, I'm trying to get as many people as involved as I can to create this interactive film that'll be seen by people all over the world. Like last year, to give you a sense of numbers, we probably got several 100,000 unique visits to our website every day. I think it was something like 1.2 or almost 2 million unique visitors for the month. And so this is something that could be seen by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and on this platform, on 30 Mosques. And so that's the reason why we're trying to get this project out and get the word out about that. And I think that's it. Oh yeah, and so by taking all these stories around the world, it's 30 mosques that's able to connect a guy in Los Angeles to a guy in Malaysia, to someone in the Philippines, to someone in Holland, for example. I think that's it. Yes, that's it. And you can like us on Facebook because it helps my self-esteem. And thank you guys very much.